Okay. Hello, my cookie crumbles. Going with the catchphrase from my editor. Yeah? Are you happy?
I'm really happy.
Good. This week we're going to look on some JavaScript where you can move values from one dropdown to another. And when will this be useful, you might ask? Well, let me give you a short demo. We have a service here. Let's say it's an edit user service where you have a list of the security groups that the selected user is a member of. So in this case, you show to list them here in the left dropdown, and you want to have a dropdown on the right of that where you put the ones that the group access to remove. So if I click to remove this one, it gets moved over here, and so on and so on and so on. And I can undo by clicking here and adding them back. So this is a little user experience thing where you can move it back and forth between dropdowns, and that's something that we have done in our old UI before. And in our old UI, we had access to jQuery to select fields and do all the nice thing that you could do with jQuery. But in our new UI, we have disabled jQuery, so you can't be able to you can't use jQuery to select fields, and but you can use jQuery today to access jQuery for each functions and stuff like that. And you can actually put jQuery back in there, but you won't get the good old functions get $element and so on that you were used to in the old UI. And the reason we removed jQuery selectors in the new UI is because service developers started pointing on field IDs and class names that we had in the old UI. And that created a contract for us that we didn't really want, meaning that we couldn't change the class names or IDs or the hierarchy of things in the DOM. Because if we did that and someone upgraded to that version, their JavaScripts would stop working. Okay, so but there's this script that I created now is like a supported version of that old JavaScript. The old JavaScript worked by attaching a function to when an object was removed from a dropdown. So basically it attached to onChanged, and it looked on the event in the onChange, the event that came as a parameter, and it checked if something has been removed from the dropdown. And that was done with jQuery. And as I said, as we don't have jQuery anymore, we need to find a different solution. So I created this function instead. And what it does is that it basically it looks on the initial values, and we can look in here, and it will use a filter on the array. It will create an array of all the initial values, and it will check what the difference was now that you have removed something. And we look for the intersect as well, so that's the value that they have in common. And then we add, well, if we take it from the start, perhaps better. So when you use this function, you need to have the window initial variable set, and after that you use the function move items, here declared in the window class or object. And well, if we declare it in the window object, we have access to it in the full scope afterwards. And you send in the set point from field, and the second parameter is the to field, and the third parameter is the is dynamic switch, which defaults to false. And if you will need to send in from and to like this, so you send in the whole field basically. So it will, if you trigger on change here, so after you have put this script in some kind of field early up, in my case input hidden, and I put it on load, and then on change on the two drop downs, I just called the method move items, and the first one was from and the second one was to. So my first drop down is to approve and my second one is to reject. And on the second drop down I just switch the arguments, because now I want to move from the second drop down to the first one. So if we go back here, and we have an if on dynamic here, because if it's not a dynamic, it will be more of a flat array, so you can just access the value of the array through item. But if it's values that comes from a dynamic source, such as a drop down or something, you need to have the dynamic switch set to true, because then we access it on the value and the name of the initial values. So, and I will put this script in the comment, or I will put it in a GitHub project or something like that, so you can feel free to use it. We have a different, this is a static scenario by the way, so if we look on these drop downs, they are static, multi-select and static, and you need to uncheck restricted, because you want to put values, well, the function adds values and removes values programmatically from these drop downs. So we have another scenario here where we have a dynamic data source. So in this case, I have a drop down here with a get default method that returns my groups. If we look on the code for this drop down really quick, go in here. I created one called drop down FD fake. So I created an array of hash tables with ID and name. And this is something you can do if you want to fake your own drop down. And basically in get default, I just select those two and output them here in this fashion. And so what I can do, if we look here, what's it called? It's called test. So in the console I can go test.val, and now I only get an array of the values behind all of these. I don't get the labels. If I want to have the labels, I can go get items instead. And I get the whole shebang actually. I get the cost and the monthly cost as well. And the text property in this case. So what I've done here is that I just did some minor adjustments on this script, put value and text in here on all the places that we need that. I can maximize that. That's the function itself. And so I start out by clearing all these, because we have some default values there, you know, value 1, value 2, because they are empty, static, non-restricted drop downs. Just clear them so they're empty. They are multi-select as well. And then I use a set timeout function because I want to wait 3 seconds. Let's say we can wait 1.5 seconds instead because it's very fast. Because I want to wait for the data from the data source to be populated, and I can't do that without waiting just slightly. And after 1.5 seconds, I get all the items and put it in the window initial variable, and then I for each on all these values, and I add it to the first dropdown that I call to approve. And after 1.5 seconds, we put them over here. So in a real scenario, perhaps we would hide these, hide this one. And when I click here, we could actually have now these are not dynamic. These are just standard, static, unrestricted. But what I could do is this user experience is quite nice out of a workflow design perspective as well, because if these are the groups that the user is a member of today, and the admin is supposed to click here to remove them, all I need to do in the workflow afterwards is actually do it like this to remove the groups, or remove the user from the groups. I just bind this to the same dropdown, this dropdown that is, to the group parameter on the remove ZP AD group member, and I need to provide the identity as well, and I don't have that in the small form, but it's instead of having code activities or whatnot to determine if something needs to be removed and so on. So it's quite nice. Okay, there's some other ways of doing this, but in this dynamic case, this could perhaps symbolize values being provided from in this case it's values supplied through another dropdown through the get default method, but it might as well come from a web service that sends this out to you. And but you need to modify the function in a way that it matches the object that you return. In my case, I just say that it's the value that comes back, or the array that comes back, each row must have a value and a text property. Okay. So that's it for this week. Hope you learned something, and take it easy.